Thanks for tuning in to the Drive On podcast, where we talk about issues affecting veterans after they get out of the military. Before we get started, I'd like to ask a favor. If you haven't done so already, please rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts. If you've already done that, thank you. These ratings help the show get discovered so it can reach a wider audience. And while you're there, click the subscribe button so that you get notified of new episodes as soon as they come out. If you don't use Apple Podcasts, you can visit driveonpodcast.com/subscribe to find other ways of subscribing, including our email list. I'm your host, Scott DeLuzio, and now, let's get on with the show. Hey everyone, today my guest is Brian Holt. Brian is an Army veteran who has been expressing his artistic side after getting out of the Army. He's on a mission to support veterans and their mental health through art, which we're going to get to in just a minute. But before I give it all away, welcome to the show, Brian. And why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure. I grew up in a small town in Galion, Ohio. In 2005, I joined the Army. I was in the infantry for about 9 and some change. I deployed 4 times. I deployed 3 times to Iraq, 1 time to Afghanistan. So basically right around the time that my son was born, my wife and I both decided, hey, we'll switch roles. I kind of helped her out while she was in nursing school. Once she graduated, she kind of took over, the heavy roles. And so, she's supporting me while I'm in school right now at UTEP, which is the University of Texas at El Paso. I'm in the art department over there. I'm currently going to school to be an art educator. But beyond that, I am working in 2 different galleries. And basically my mission so far is, well, not just to be an art educator for kids, but I really am trying to get out there, and a lot of my art speaks to mental health. And I'm really trying to share that message with people. I'd really like to get something going here in El Paso. We have Fort Bliss here. Mm-hmm. I really like to work with veterans as well, because it's really helped me through a lot of difficult times. And I feel like, that might be an option for folks who are, struggling, whether they're in or whether they're out, Right. A lot of times when we redeploy, they have these 2-week-long deals where they're trying to decompress. And I make jokes because I say, a lot of those events that they had us doing, there were these team building things, but they still were like high intensity, like paintball, climbing right. mountains. I just did that in Afghanistan. I'm trying to forget about all that stuff. So I don't know. I'd really like to get something going here in El Paso, but obviously I kind of started making way with that, and but COVID hit, and that kind of just shut everything down. So right now I'm just really sharing that message from these 2 galleries I'm in, which is great because the news radio stations have been coming out there and kind of slowly sharing my story. And I'm really hoping that, maybe somebody on Bliss, hears me and says, hey, we'd like to have you come on over,
Yeah, that would be great because, like you said, the high intensity things, paintball and mountain climbing and all that kind of stuff is, it might be good for certain people, but there's other people who might be looking for something else to decompress and unwind and, adjust back to, a more normal routine and not be, that high intensity level, type of thing. And artwork, I think, is a great way to do that. I've had several artists on the podcast before, and they all talk about, how much benefit there is. And honestly, after I talked to the first person, I was a little skeptical about, the benefits of healing through artwork and everything. And I never really prior to, being in elementary school and, in art class or whatever, I never really was into art all that much. But I decided to give it a try myself. And, I picked up a sketchbook and I just started sketching it. And I found out that I was actually somewhat decent at it, what the end result is. And I'm not, going to have stuff in, famous galleries or anything like that. I'm not a professional by any stretch of the imagination, but what I found for me is that when I was doing the artwork, I found myself very focused on that, and it kind of blocked out all the other issues that were going on, all the other problems that I was having, and it actually made my mood that much better, by not worrying about things and not focusing on the stresses and all this other stuff. I was just focusing on having fun and enjoying the drawing and the artwork that I was creating, and it actually did elevate my mood. So it was really amazing that it actually worked. And even though I was somewhat skeptical at first, it really did help. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing, and what your vision is, to help with veterans with their mental health through artwork.
Sure. So, well, currently I'm at a gallery here, what's called the Mission Trail, here in Socorro. And basically it's a group of artists out there, but I've been speaking with all these other artists who are not veterans, and they're all on board. They said, hey, if we can get in touch with somebody from Fort Bliss, we could bring some of these folks out here to this gallery space, out back, and, we could basically, give them lessons. And I kind of feel like I could speak from experience. I was in the infantry, but throughout my time in the Army, it's kind of funny. I ended up being with a bunch of different MOSs. My 15-month tour in Iraq, I was with tankers, and then, and when I got here to Bliss, there was an MP company, 212th MP company, who needed people to go to Iraq with them. So I volunteered to do that. So I deployed with MPs. And then when I redeployed, they pushed me over to a Cav Scout unit. So I ended up being in a Cav Scout unit. And then after the Cav Scout unit, they're like, okay, now we no longer need you. They pushed me into an engineer battalion who had a anti-tank company. But basically, I've seen all different MOSs. So I have that experience, and deploying. And I think I have a pretty good idea, because I've struggled myself throughout the years. I have a pretty good grasp on like what we go through, whether it's deployment, whether it's life, at home, life after being in the service and deploying. So I have a pretty good grasp on what folks are going through. But I also feel like, now I'm on this art platform where I feel like, I can stand in front of these people and say, hey, look, I've been there. I've been in your shoes. And here's this thing that I found, that's really working for me. It commands my attention. When you're doing any sort of artwork, whether it's working with clay or painting or drawing, it does command your attention, because you're focused on one thing. You're thinking about what you're going to put into this work, and by that, you're not thinking about all that outside stuff that's going on, all this chaos that might be going on in the background. It gives you a breather for a minute.
Right.
I think it's, I work out. I say that it's just as therapeutic as working out, so yeah, that's really my goal. Is I'm really hoping that eventually we can get that going. It's just really difficult with COVID times right now. And, just trying to link up with the people. I've been reaching out, and I kind of always just kind of run into these dead ends where like, yeah, somebody had something going on Fort Bliss, but, now they're gone. Right? It's just finding out, who the right connects are and who I can talk with. And I think eventually those things will happen, slowly but surely. Great things are happening here. And, I think it'll end up getting there,
Right. Yeah. And I think, through, outreach, through the media, like you said, in the local news and the radio stations, hopefully this podcast will raise awareness of what you're trying to do. And, eventually, hopefully the right people can hear your message and hear that you're trying to, make these connections and everything. And we can, help you out with that and get you in touch with the right people. So if anyone is listening to this episode and and knows who the right people are, feel free to reach out, and we'll get you in touch with Brian, or reach out directly to Brian. We'll have all his information in the show notes and everything. You can reach out to him, and we can make that connection happen. Let's turn it back to you for a second. So how did you discover that you had this artistic side? Was it something that you just started doing all along, or was it something that you started doing after getting out of the military? What was it that prompted you to kind of get in touch with this artistic side?
I've always been involved in art since I was a kid. Even before I joined the service, I was doing smaller shows, and I think right before I went to basic training, I went downtown to this little festival that was going on in Columbus, Ohio, and I basically like sold all my paintings for dirt cheap, because I was like, hey, I'm not gonna be able to carry these with me. I was trying to lighten my load.
Mm-hmm.
But when I joined the Army, obviously there wasn't a lot of time for that. While I was deployed and whatnot, I would sketch and draw here and there, the random, hey, Holt, can you draw me my tattoo? Hey, can you design the company shirt, or the coin?
Mm-hmm.
So I did still do a little bit of work while I was in. But I tell people this short little story, and I won't romanticize it or anything, but basically there was a room inspection one day in Iraq, and I remember they were doing a room inspection, the door gets kicked in, and I remember I was just sketching in my sketchbook, and one of the higher ups had just took his chewing tobacco and threw it at my drawing, and was like, hey, instead of drawing, you should be, cleaning your weapon, which my weapons were always clean. It didn't,
Right.
but it was just that thing, where it's like, they don't get it and they don't understand it. So they, so they destroyed it. So I put it away,
Mm-hmm.
and online I go by this thing where I call it the Ember Flow, which was this idea that it was a fake ideal that I had made up where, I'm going to put that away for now while I'm in the service. I took a long break from it. I didn't even know if those skills were going to be recoverable. But I'd always imagined that there was this small ember inside that maybe when I got out, I could reignite that. And that's what's really been happening here in El Paso. I got out of the service. I worked for a little bit before going back to school. I just told my wife, I said, hey, I really want to chase this down. I think I still have it. And when I started taking these first couple of courses, I remember my professor saying, hey, man, you got it. You're on fire. And so I was like, so that's kind of where that came from. But yeah, I don't know. I keep on trying to push the limits. I think that's something that I did bring back with me from the service, always, trying to improve your position, right? Always trying to push your limits, be the best you can be. And so that is something I feel like I carried over with me. I had went to Pittsburgh Art Institute when I was a kid, and I was just goofing off. I was 19 years old. I wasn't ready for school, but here I am. I'm sitting here with a 3.8 GPA at UTEP. I'm like, that's happening because I was in the service. So right. I think those are also the benefits that maybe come from the service too for people is, it does force you to grow up, and it does, teach you those skills, being on time, and, the 15 minutes early deal. And, just, I don't know, those are definitely skills that I carried over from the military.
Right.
But yeah, always. Yeah. So answer your question. Yeah. I've always been involved in art, and I just chased it back down after I got out,
Yeah, I mean that is unfortunate that situation occurred with you, with your the higher ups with their tobacco and ruining the art. It's an unfortunate thing that happened, but I think all of these things lead you into a path that eventually is where you're meant to be, and it sounds like you're on that path right now, and you're going to be doing the things that you're meant to be doing, and like they said, that fire has been reignited, and that ember didn't actually die out in you. So that's a good thing. But the other thing that you were saying too is that step outside of your comfort zone, and try new things, and challenge yourself. I think that's something that a lot of times veterans have trouble with, because they just get so stuck in their ways of, this is who I am and this is what I do. But
Yeah.
they get out of the service and they lose that identity. You're no longer an infantryman or a military police, or whatever it is. You're no longer that anymore, and you have to kind of reinvent yourself and discover something about yourself. So um, I think things like art, whether it's drawing or painting, or even something more like musical, or other types of art forms, helps you to express yourself, and let a little piece of you out there, and maybe even discover something about yourself, that can maybe even help you figure out who it is that you're supposed to be after losing that identity. Um, so it's
I was
a,
gonna
a
say
good point that
too,
you made there.
yeah, I was gonna say too, by no means am I like, do I have it all figured out? Or no, I
Right.
still, I was diagnosed with PTSD. I still suffer from anxiety and depression and whatnot, but I always cleaned on to that, resiliency. You've got to figure a way to be resilient. If you have issues, don't focus so much on your issues. Try and focus on how you can get above that. And I look, and I've had moments where it's like, oh man, I'm down and I don't even feel like coming out of this hole.
Hmm.
But I found a way, yeah, especially through art. I don't know what it is, but I've really found a way with, and I found that resiliency through that. And so yeah, that's why I state, maybe this might work for others, and it might not for other people too. I always imagine, getting out in front of, these soldiers. Look, I was a soldier. I know sometimes it can be pretty grimy. So you're always going to have that guy in the background, or a gal in the background that's like, psh, art,
Yeah.
like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
But I'm not worried about them. I'm more focused on who is interested in checking this out, and maybe using this as a tool.
Yeah, for sure. And that is really what it is. It's a tool. It's another tool in your toolbox that you can use for the purpose of, improving your mental health, or relieving stress, or whatever the issue is that you're dealing with. It can possibly help you with that. And if you're not open to it, like you said, there's going to be always those people who are not open to it. Then it's not for them. That's fine. I'm sure there's something else out there for them. Maybe they're more inclined to be the paintball or mountain climbing type people that
I
that
love
you were
all that
talking about before.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with any of those
Right.
types of things. But some of those activities resonate more with some people than others. Um, so that's, I mean, it's definitely good that we have a wide range of tools available to us, and these alternative forms of therapy, if you want to call it that, can definitely be beneficial to people who don't really resonate maybe with the traditional forms of maybe talk therapy, or things like that. Maybe it's not working out for them. Maybe some of these alternative type things can work out for them. So it's definitely worth a try if that's something that you are maybe struggling with, and you want to give it a shot. I definitely say, artwork is one way to do it, and it's a fairly low barrier to entry. You can pick up any kind of notepad and a
Yeah.
pencil, and you can just start sketching, and it's not really that hard to start doing it. And we're not talking about like drawing perfect pictures. You just draw anything, and even doodles or something. It's something
Oh,
that you're
it,
focusing on.
yeah, it can even be fun. Sometimes me and my buddies, all my art friends, we get together and we start working on stuff, and sometimes the drawing looks really wonky or whatever. We just laugh. That's the cool thing about it too, is while you're working, you're talking, you're
Mhm.
having conversations, you're sharing stories. It's communal, and so you still get that I don't know, like wolf pack mentality, like you're a part of something, and you have your small group. Yeah, like a platoon, or even a fire team.
Right.
I always enjoy that, just yeah, being around with people and talking about things, even like I was telling you that a lot of my work deals with mental health. I'm able to bring about awareness too with folks who may not even talk about that stuff. And they don't even necessarily need to be veterans, they
Hmm.
might just, be a civilian or whatnot. And um, I like opening up those conversations because, a lot of times people may not talk. I'm losing friends like every year. I think, we had delayed this conversation that we're having now because I had a friend who had passed away from suicide, and I just went to a funeral last year for my friend who passed away. So I'm always like reaching out and saying, hey, if you need to talk, I'm here, or
Right.
just swing through, or, give me a call, or you know, I really want people to resonate on that as well. Like, call each other often, check on each other, and those are the messages that I really try to share through my work too.
Mhm. Yeah, and that's really the reason why I started this podcast, was, it just hears about so many people who have passed away because of suicide, and are struggling with other issues, whether it's homelessness or drug or alcohol abuse, or PTSD, depression, all these different things that they're struggling with. And the last thing I want people to do is think that they're all alone in this. That, oh, I must be the only one who's feeling this way or whatever. Because you're not. Like, we a lot of us have felt a lot of the same things that you're feeling and are going through. There's a whole community of people out there, and like you said, reach out and talk to people. If you're struggling with something, pick up the phone and call a friend, and meet up for a coffee or whatever, and get together, talk about it. If you're into, you're both into art or something, you can, like you said, you can get together a group of people and you can just sit around and chat or whatever while you're drawing or painting or whatever it is. It's a perfect way to get that camaraderie back that you might have lost by leaving the service. And I think that's something that a lot of people feel like they're missing out on, is that camaraderie too. Um, so specifically for you, what turned you on to art as a form of therapy, as opposed to any other? Because I know you said you struggled with PTSD and the depression and things like that, but um was it just something that you kind of fell into because you've always just been drawing and you just kind of noticed it was working for you, or was that something that someone turned you on to, specifically as a therapy option?
Well, actually, when I started going, I started off at community college here, and I had met a couple of veterans there that were doing artwork. But when I got to UTEP, I had met a handful of really well-respected artists who were all veterans here, and we all kind of sat down and started talking. I said, "Man, this has really been working wonders for me. I don't know about you." And there were like 5 of us, and I remember I locked down like a gallery space called the Glass Gallery at the university, and it was just supposed to be my solo show. But I don't want it to be about just me. I think there's a bigger message here. So I was able to get these other veteran artists, my friends, to get on board, and we did a veterans show. And it's funny because in the art world they're like, well, how is it cohesive? Like, how are all these works in here? Are they same? Are they fluid? And I'm like, well, they're fluid because we're all veterans.
Hmm.
We all had different works and we were all doing different things, but there was definitely a message that we were all sharing, that artwork was doing something great for all of us, and all in all, I'm like, man, this is great that we get to share what, that our story and what's going on, because I think a lot of folks don't see that, or they don't, or they also make assumptions too, like, oh, veterans are a certain way, but
Right.
when you're in that area, or that room, it takes all that away, and they're like, man, these people are normal, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they have emotions too. I think there's this thing, while you're in the service, there's that stigma of like, don't share your emotions, be stoic, you know um
Suck it
get
up and be a man.
get the highest PT score, lift
Yep.
weights, and it's like, don't show any weakness. And now that I'm out, it's like I've learned to just really cast that to the side, and not worry too much about that, and really approach like the things that you're not supposed to talk about. And I think that's what my friends and I were able to do in that space as well. So I think that first show kind of really ignited that idea. We started talking like, hey, we need to get something going here, in El Paso
Mm-hmm.
for veterans, and like I said, I think once this COVID thing settles down, if it ever settles down, even if it doesn't, I don't know. I'll be honest with you, things kind of happen organically a lot of times, and I think it'll come when it needs to come.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You'll be in the right place at the right time when
Right.
it's time for that. And exactly. Yeah. The community, the group of people, getting together, is, I think, an important aspect of it, to help, with the expression. One of the other artists that I spoke to on this podcast said that when they were, they're creating their artwork, sometimes it was just like, an extension of themselves and their thoughts and things like that. And it's not anything that they necessarily would have opened up and talked about, but they were putting it into their artwork. And when they came back to the gallery where their art was being displayed, people would ask them questions about it. And then all of a sudden they opened it up and they started talking about it, stuff that they never would have talked about before. And so it's a great way to, express yourself and open up and heal through those conversations,
Yeah, no,
so
absolutely.
um what advice would you have for veterans out there who are struggling with PTSD or depression, or any other issues that they might be dealing with, and maybe not even just veterans, but anyone who's struggling with these types of issues, and who might be considering taking up art as a form of therapy?
Mhm. You know, to be honest with you, when I first got out, I was going to a counselor. I think that counselor like fell through. They had to move somewhere, so then I had to go to another counselor. And basically, honest with you, I ended up like having to rehash all my stories like 4 or 5 times, and it was super painful to just unveil all that stuff over and over and over.
Right.
Uh, but yeah, right now I'm not talking with a counselor or anything. I feel like I've kind of been able to handle things on my own in my own space. Yeah. And it's like you said, these extensions of yourself, putting it into your work. I think those things have been gratifying enough for me that I feel more positives than negatives. Um, but certainly counseling is a great tool,
Hmm.
definitely talking to somebody. Surrounding yourself with really good people, I think is super important. I mean, my wife is such a great supporter of everything I'm doing right now. So I have that great support system there. Surrounding yourself with great friends, um, just trying to find ways to get over, all the bad stuff. I think a lot of times what I would do back in the day is I would focus on all the bad stuff, and then I was finding myself in that depression and that hole. Um, Medications, I think I was doing some medications at first, and they really weren't for me. I think medications might be for other people, but for me, I was like, yeah, this, I don't like it. It makes me feel like I'm not even here. So, but I definitely feel like some folks need that. So I'm certainly not downing medication
Right.
counseling, but for me, just I don't know, getting out in my garage and working out every once in a while, or just going on a run, or um, just being creative, and just keeping my mind busy. I feel like I'm just like nonstop running around now. It's just
Yeah.
never ending. I'm always like I have something going on. As soon as this podcast is over, I'm gonna go paint a mural right now. Like I think that's a big part of it too, is keep your mind busy. Same thing for school. I was not gonna go back to school. I was like, man, I am not a smart person. I didn't have great grades in high school, but I was a young kid. And what I really found out when I went to college is, hey, all of that stuff that I learned in the military carried over, and now I work really hard for those grades, and you respect it too, because hey, that GI Bill, you earned it, you
Right.
earned that GI Bill, so use it. And I stick to that really hard. I tell kids all the time at school, hey, you're slacking off right now, and I just want you to know, like, man, I had to go do 4 tours just to get this. So you got to respect this process that's going on here, you know?
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, that's really all the advice I really have, you know, for anybody. And if you're still in and you're thinking about getting out, don't be afraid to make that jump. Certainly try and have a plan, but even if that plan falls through, something else is going to happen. You just have to keep on, like, you know, trying to find a way to work through it. You know what I mean? And it's not always going to be like gold right off at the bat. You know,
Right.
I definitely have worked my way up to where, you know, I'm at now, you know, but when I first got out, I remember just being like terrified. You know, I got out of the service. I was supposed to have a job with the railroad here in El Paso. And then I had done interviews and they said, you're a shoe-in. I said, that's great. And then a week later, they said, we just furloughed everybody, you know? So I ended up working for, you know, Frito-Lay, you know, for a year. And I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. You know, and I was like, I need to go chase that down, and I need to use that GI Bill, you know? So
Right.
that's my advice really, is just keep on going after whatever you feel super passionate about. Whatever it is, you know, if you want to be a gym instructor, go do that. You know, if you're super passionate about working out all the time, that's probably a good fit for you, you know?
You're right. Exactly. Yeah. If you're not enjoying what you're doing, it's going to be a lot harder to get out of bed every morning and make your way, into that job. It's going to end up being one of those jobs that you just hate. So, and that's life's too short to, hate what you do. You spend a lot of time working. I don't care what job you have. A lot
Yeah.
of your life is spent while you're working, and you might as well enjoy it while you're doing it. So if you can follow something that you're passionate about, more power to you. Obviously, bills need to be paid. So, there might be times when you have to take that crappy job that you don't really want because bills have to be paid, but, work towards something. Like you said, use your GI Bill and try to, take classes, at night or, whenever you can to further your education and get into the career that you were meant for, really. Um, and then life gets better when you are doing something that you're actually passionate about. So um any other information that you want to let people know about kind of your mission and things that you are working on here, before we wrap this up?
Hmm. I don't know. I could talk all day.
Okay.
No, but if you're still in the service, I think uh, you had mentioned in some of your questions online there, I had saw one that was like, did you have any regrets? I think my biggest regret was, that I didn't push myself harder while I was in the service, going to more boards and this and that. And I think what happens is a lot of times you fall into that hole. Always try and, like, yeah, just push those limits, I I feel like I could have done I probably feel like I could have done more, but I really got wrapped around these ideas, like, those negative ideas in Army. But now that I'm out, I'm like, and I don't know, I guess it's just now that I'm out, I look back on that and I say, man, I wish I would have done that differently.
Right.
I don't know, but whether it's, pushing those PT scores or, boards or whatever it is, there's a lot of stuff that happens in the military where people are like, you don't understand, man, like this stuff is getting out of control. And I'm like, I totally do, but I think that was my major issue in the military, was that, I just got wrapped up in all the politics and all that stuff. And, the thing happened in the service, it's like, I wish I would have just ignored that and stayed on my own path and try to continue to keep on pushing those limits. But, I guess that's my only advice for past Brian, is like, man,
Right.
yeah. And for anybody who might still be in, or a younger kid, yeah, always push those limits while you're there, and even after you get out, that's what you should be doing. Try to continuously improve that position,
Yeah.
I've always,
Continuous learning and improve yourself. Yeah.
yeah, I've always clung on to that, always improve your position, and if you keep on pushing that and you do it, you're going to find that good things happen, you know,
Mhm.
like I said, or organically. Great things happen when you start to try and do those things.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I think that's great advice. Well, Brian, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on and speaking with you today. Where can people go to get in touch with you and find out more about your art and everything else that you have going on?
Sure. Currently, I'm on Instagram at emberflow_art. And that, yeah, so that's Instagram. Facebook, if you just look up Brian A. Holt, it'll pop up under there. I usually just share content and what's going on there. Also, I'm at Caso Ortiz, which you can look that up on either Facebook or Instagram. I share my artwork in both of those spaces. So yeah, that's really where I share my message at. And yeah, hopefully if anybody has any questions or anybody, is even like what we talked about before, if you're struggling or like anything I stated, reach out to me. I'll talk to you.
Sure.
I'll talk to anybody. I talk to people all the time. And I love that. When somebody reaches out and says, "Hey, man, what you said or what I saw in your artwork, it speaks to me." And I'm like, "Great, let's talk about that." And hopefully, I'm able to help some folks out and I don't know, maybe shed some light.
Absolutely. Well, I'll have links to all of the profiles that you talked about
Great.
in the show notes for this episode. So anyone who's listening to this, you want to check out some of Brian's art or get in touch with him. The links will be in the show notes there. You can get in touch with him there. Brian, thank you again. Really been a pleasure.
I appreciate it. Y'all take care.
Thanks for listening to the Drive On Podcast. If you want to check out more episodes or learn more about the show, you can visit our website, driveonpodcast.com, or on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Drive On Podcast.